Good evening. My name is Mike Wilson. I am the Executive Director of AIA East Bay. Tonight we have with us Tyler Kobick, and he's going to tell us what it's like to be an architect and show his day in his life. So we've got a half an hour, and we'll start off with a quick introduction. Tyler, give us a little background about yourself and your story. How did you become a architect? What drove you to choose architecture?
Hey guys, good evening. I've always wanted to be an architect ever since I was 5 or 6 years old. It was almost like a handicap, like it was the only thing I could do. I think throughout growing up, that just became very present in almost everything I did. I built lots of forts in my backyard growing up. I think I had a tour of like 10 different forts that I built in my woods in the backyard growing up, and built rock climbing walls and skateboard ramps as I grew up, and immediately went to architecture school out of high school. And I also, in high school, I was apprenticed under a stonemason at 14. And I was also kind of running a mini construction company by the time I was 17 and was hiring my buddies during this summer. So for me, and I was always kind of, my best things were almost always art and math. It was always like, I love math. I love the logistics of the world and how things fit together. But I also like that other side of the brain and creativity and how you might sequence a series of thoughts that come to a conclusion and organize other thoughts around a, kind of a scaffolding of an idea. So that all said, I was a super early adopter and immediately applied to architecture school out of high school. At the time, I was convinced I was going to go to a school called Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute in upstate New York. But I really wanted to leave Ohio, where I'm from, Northeast Ohio. I'm from Cleveland, kind of. And I went to University of Cincinnati, where I ended up doing my undergrad. And the building was designed by Peter Eisenman. It had architects, urban planners, graphic design, car design studios, fashion design, and artists and sculptors all in the same building. And Peter Eisenman had designed the entire building around the critique. If you ever see or Google this building, it was built in the mid-90s. And the entire building is built around the main stairway, and which has all the other designers and all the other kind of creative thinkers around the school all displaying their work, and it's in public view for everyone. And they kind of get sliced and diced on this kind of big walking 25-foot wide staircase. And so I love that. I love the vulnerability of that expression of the different things that were happening in the school, and that drove me to go there. And then I also did my undergrad. I did my graduate work up in Canada at Dalhousie University. And I mostly went there due to a professor named Brian McKay Lyons I wanted to go study under, who was kind of has a specialty in design build and is one of the kind of bigger, kind of critical regionalist architects of Canada, whose work I've enjoyed, who develops buildings all over the world.
Interesting. So you knew you wanted to be an architect from an incredibly young age, and not just be an architect, but design build. You were drawn to that at a young age as well.
Yeah. I ran a construction company through architecture school and worked and built buildings I built a lot of projects for my professors in their backyards during weekends.
Fantastic. I'm going to do a quick screen share so we can get some of these images up and start talking about them. So again, tonight we have Tyler Kobick. A few more people have joined us, so I wanted to kind of do a reintroduction. I am going to ask people who, if you're able, please turn your camera on. It makes the interaction a little more intimate, and just it makes for a better event, especially when we start asking questions. So Tyler, tell us what we're looking at here.
So following architecture school, I worked for a number of different architects in different places, and both my schools were also co-op. So I worked for different architects actually integrated into my school time. In that time, it definitely became apparent I'm very, very design build. I love the process of construction and how well it's informed by doing architecture, and vice versa. So I also um, I really, really appreciate architects who know what kind of materials they're working with and kind of devour the material science and the application of what they're doing and have pretty strong empathy for the contractor. And I also really adore contractors who are empathetic towards the architect, and they understand that they do have to inform each other in the work that they do, and they really aren't separate disciplines because they're all making the same thing. So anyway, worked for a number of different architects, but almost always kind of ran my own thing, which is a thread throughout that. And in 2011, after the recession, I was teaching at the University of Vermont, and we had a grant to develop a design build program for to work with local schools around food and ecological design, and started to get house commissions for friends in Burlington, and met my business partner at the time. And for about 5 years, we traveled around to different places building really pretty unusual buildings. And sometimes we would become the builder for architects that we knew, or sometimes we would have the commission to be the architect and builder. And it was pretty rare at the time that we would just be architect for a project. We were almost always hired under the auspice that we would also build the thing. And the reason we were being hired was usually because your typical everyday builder was not able to either embrace the architect's work we were working with and ask them enough questions where they got to get their architecture delivered, or the person wanted a single source delivery. And so fast forward then to about 6 years ago to moving here to the Bay with my business partner, Joe. Once we moved here, we started to hire folks. We had a bigger project that we were still doing architecture for on the East Coast. We had about a 25,000 square foot building. We had a commission to draw, so we could kind of live anywhere we wanted at the time. And we had already lived in I had already lived in Southern California building there. I had already built an inn on the north coast of Mendocino County. And so the Bay Area, my wife's from this area, looked perfectly like a perfectly beautiful and developing and growing place to live. And in particular, we had been in New England long enough that we were tired of nostalgia and a lot of money being in the hands of much, much older generation, and it being hard to get commissions as a young architect, in particular because a lot of the money and the deals were between other 60 and 70-year-olds with other 60, 70-year-olds. And the Bay Area, as I'm sure you all know, is of course there's a lot more younger people with money due to tech, and sort of also just kind of the innovation atmosphere around the Bay Area. So that was a huge amount of the reason why we came to, is like we wanted to move to a place with a younger culture around thinking, design, building, and architecture.
So Tyler, tell me what a day in the life of Tyler Kobick is like.
So now we have a design build firm called Design Draw Build, and we're 21 people. We have eight architects in the office, and we just came back to working in person last week. The lower floor here that you see, Mike, is our office. The upper floor we rent to tenants. And then we have 13 guys who build for us in the field, who are builders, who swing hammers or construction management. Currently, we have about 30 projects that we run at once in the office, and we have about 6 construction projects that are active at once.
Wow.
We build for other architects, and we also still build our own work. And nowadays, we also do architecture where we hire other builders to build our work if our bid and our estimate isn't what the client's looking for.
Fantastic. So let's start off with this is where you work, right? This is, now we saw this last slide is the
That's the,
inside of that space, right?
yeah, that's the upper space of our building. So we renovated 3 years ago a 1918 auto garage, and then this floor was added in 1959. So you can see the steel structure that was added in 1959 with this wood ceiling. And then
Mhm.
below you see the masonry, and that used to be the top of the parapet. This is down the bottom.
Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. Wait, hey, technology. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, back one slide, Mike. Yeah. So if you see where we kind of cut a line down the side of the old windows, then kind of revealing this parapet brick wall. In the distance, you can see where the pocket beams of the building were.
Mhm.
So,
Interesting.
so this is a space we rent upstairs. We may eventually move the office upstairs. There's a lot more light up there. And then we are kind of camped into this automotive garage in the bottom.
So I'm gonna open it up for questions. Let's see, who should I call on? Uh,
And so before we start, I just want to say we have just a really unique model, I think relatively unique model of business in architecture, because we are probably 4 out of every $5 is a construction dollar in our architecture firm.
Ah, interesting.
So construction does help keep the lights on, but we do fine, and we keep we're able to pay the bills with architecture, but they really are very interconnected.
So looks like Kizu has a question. Unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes. And okay, so my name is Chi Zhu, and I actually I teach in DVC in their architecture program, and I wish our students could be here to listen to this and have a conversation with you. I found this program online. I said I want to join to listen myself. So I think I'm definitely going to bring the message to the students. And I think I put in a question online, say because on the introduction it says your company is a design build company, and as well as tackle with ecological design. So I put in the question, what is your approach to ecological design? That's also a question that students are really interested right now, and in your unique background for both operating on design and build. So what's your perspective on that?
Thanks for the question. Hi there. So some of the intention, by the way, of this forum is so that this conversation can be recorded. So I believe after this, Mike could give you access for use with your students potentially, but you'll have to talk with him.
We'll share the link around for sure.
That'll be awesome. Yeah.
Okay. And certainly happy to follow up with students in particular if they're interested in design build. We do hire a lot of students out of the design build programs. So we specifically look at Auburn, University of Cincinnati, Dalhousie, both of which are my alma maters, but both of which have co-op programs. But we love students who like to build or who are interested in making things. Yeah. So we absolutely positively think that the one of the ways that ecological design is missed on the kind of higher level of ecological design thinking has a lot to do with or we think that students and architects who don't understand how something is made and who don't embrace a relationship with a contractor are wasting usually enormous amounts of material and money. And that's a huge portion of our process, is an integrated making process. And so I think that that's a big part of our ethic, certainly a lot of adaptive reuse. And also a lot of our clients come to us because they want a single source delivery, and they have a project that is design build oriented, which usually means that your typical contractor who's looking for predictability or something that they can just kind of print and repeat again and again and do efficiently is not going to be able to save the building someone wants to save. So we also get a lot of historic projects and adaptive reuse projects, just like the building that I was just showing you for our office, because when you're doing adaptive reuse buildings, you really need to have a strong relationship with the builder, because new things come up every day and you have to respond very fast as details change and the project, kind of morphs as you go along. So much so that almost at the end, you're going to have to do a, kind of a new drawing of the entire design of what actually ended up versus what you prescribed in the first place. So that is certainly one stance we have in ecological design. Other stances are kind of more practical, of course, lots of heat pump systems, integration with our MEP, our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing subcontractors, because as opposed to a typical architect, we know them all, we actually pay them, and we don't need MEP engineers to design our things. We usually work directly with the subcontractors and the energy consultants to work the projects out directly, because we're actually the builder as well. So there's kind of an execution piece that's also more thorough, I believe, in the energy analysis and execution.
Yeah, at the beginning, sorry, thank you for the answer. At the beginning, I heard you were talking about we don't know where material came from the back of the truck. I think that's a good thing to really know where the material come from and how the material was produced to its state that is ready for construction. Those are really really nice suggestions. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, have you ever read Kieran Timberlake's book called Refabricating Architecture?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think some of their concepts are a little corporate, honestly, especially for our scale of work. But I do at least really appreciate some of the points they make in that book about the architect being reunited with the material scientist. And I think the material scientist, that actually still sounds a little bit high and mighty for me, and the kind of gritty work that we do, because it's actually the architect being reunited with on our level, the material scientist is also mixed with the subcontractor. So the person who really knows the intimate working relationships of the material are the subs. And if architects aren't in contact with subs, they usually lose a lot of the knowledge that the subs have accumulated over 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And sort of that embrace of the blue collar conditions of how something comes to be is a place we work, and we have a unique model.
Mm-hmm.
So let me jump back to our slides, because people have written in and really are eager to sort of get an impression of what it's like to work in your office. Can you tell us what we're looking at here?
Oh, this is just me sitting at my desk. And I do a lot of hand drawing still, and a lot of kind of redlining and illustration of concept ideas. I certainly can, I know all the programs, all the digital this and that, but I really communicate the best by hand drawing and communicating and drawing from plan to section to elevation, or drawing in 3D. And so I do, I basically develop almost all the detailed development in the office.
Oh, I forgot to ask you, you mentioned,
and if you look behind me, that's.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mike, you went out for a second. What did you say?
Yeah, my internet connection is not great. I wanted to get the name of that book you mentioned, because I want to put it in the chat.
Oh, Refabricating Architecture.
What was the author's name?
It's not prefabricating, refabricating.
Got it.
I think it's by Kieran Timberlake. It's about their office. It's about their methodology around sort of systemizing the making of architecture.
Okay, I just want to make sure we capture, because I'm sure viewers after the fact are going to want to know about that. So here you are in your office. This is a wider view. What are we seeing here?
Okay, so this is actually, to the right is a young fella, actually, he just joined us from Yale. He's an architect. In the middle is actually a construction manager. His name's Eric. And to the left is Nicole. She's actually in our, she's a bit our business manager, actually. And Nicole actually does participate in some design conversations actually too, because she's a designer and an artist. But this is probably a meeting about a budget. So as opposed to a lot of architects, we also do some pretty extensive estimating and budgeting, because as builders, we're on the hook for the costs of the projects, of course. And so every time we draw a line, it has a price implication. And so we make these extensive, long, drawn out estimating budgets. And so we really pair the drawing with pricing sheets, and then we use the pricing sheets almost as an interior design spec sheet, and we go back to the drawing and then back to the pricing sheet. And the pricing sheet usually is 180 to 250 lines of different expectations that the client will get in their project.
That's an interesting point of view, because I think many students think there's just a whole lot of drawing and designing involved, but it sounds like, it is a business, right? You've got to make money, and it has to pencil out correctly for your client.
And it's also a communication task. And we find that if we're not writing what we're developing in the architecture at the same time that we're drawing it, the communication isn't clear to the owner.
Gotcha. So speaking of communication, I'm going to play this video. You tell us what we're looking at here. What are we going to see?
So this is just a Monday morning meeting in our office. We go over all the projects that we run at once. Like I was saying, we run 25 to 30 at once. And so this is a morning meeting where we go through every single project and the expectations from our clients during that upcoming week.
So we'll get the vibe for what it's like.
Announcements. What's new?
There is Salvadorian quesadilla over there. There is coffee. Please help with that.
Yeah, that's new, huh?
Nice.
That's
So hours of that, huh?
about an hour and a half every Monday. Yeah.
You're killing all the glamour of the profession.
Is there glamour?
One is not sure. One of the other things that students love to hear from you is if you could share a project that you like. We were looking at a few of them earlier. If there's one in particular you'd like to talk about, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. Yeah, so we've already seen a little bit of our building. I'll show you a house that we're working on in the Montclair Hills. Can you pull that one up, Mike? Or do you want me to share screen?
See, I think I got it here. House working on.
House working on, that's it.
Okay, great. Let me grab that.
Okay, so this is a house that was originally built in 1949, very, very mid-century. And the project came to us in 2016 from a client who had left the building empty for the last 10 years. And they live in Manhattan, and it was their dream retirement house. And so this year we did the first, and it took quite a while to get through the planning department. It's a creek project, and in the hills of Oakland, a creek project has to go through pretty extensive environmental review to avoid a lot of pollutants and so forth running off, running into the stream. And so we have 2 phases to the project. This year we'll build the second phase, and what you're seeing here is about kind of 95% done through phase 1 for initial move-in. So it's only a 1,250 square foot house, but there's actually a garage and ADU off the back. There's a very big cypress tree here to the left. And so this deck in the front's new. All these walls have been restuccoed. All this glass is new. And here in front and top, you see this is actually finished dense glass, which is a fireproofing material that we're actually exposing here in this picture. And then we kind of custom designed and built and installed all this this sheet metal on the crown or the roof of the building. It has a beautiful little view, and it has this kind of really nice orientation to the land and to the site, and kind of the view corridor. And
So what attracted you to this project? Why did you pick it out of all, the hundreds of projects you had? This is the one you wanted to show us.
Well, this is my future house that I'm moving into in 6 months. So why did I pick it out of a hat? It's because I was able to do everything I wanted to do. And in the course of certainly of running a business, and it's very frustrating, like, having clients and doing what they want to do is most of your day. And so having the vulnerability of all the choices being your own and having your own costs to bear is, like, I think far more rewarding. So there's definitely a next phase where we will eventually, I think in 5 to 10 years, be almost exclusively in development and developing our own projects and not have any more fee for client work coming through the company. So
Right.
I guess I'm showing these 2 projects in particular because we were a developer on them. And I think that, and that's where I want to take the firm, and that's where I want to take our work, is I want to move to a place where we no longer have clients.
So as we wrap up, I want to ask you, what advice do you have for students that are currently graduating? They're concerned about 2 main things. One is, of course,
Well, I mean, as you might have heard here in my voice, I don't really believe in architecture as a pure business model.
Mhm.
I think it's a silly business model, and in a way that architects have come to be co-delivery devices for society, and they're this just tiny little spoke in the wheel anymore, rather than kind of owning the entirety of the process. And so we very much believe in I've kind of an old school belief in the architect as sort of master, mason, in the same way the cathedrals were built or something. And maybe that's from my stonemason time growing up. And I think that the master mason now is really the developer. And being a contractor has been an empowering aspect of running our architecture firm, because it allows us to be far more in control of the price and the entirety of the project. And for me, the next step in that is becoming a developer on top of that. And so that you can control the whole vision and the delivery of the entire vision, and also the value of the vision after it's realized. And if only 1% of the value of a building is in its construction and 99% of the value is after construction, why don't architects own their buildings more often? And architects would have a greater say in the body politic of the city, and they have far more ability to shape the city if they weren't beholden to developers and they themselves were developers, and we could bring all the design tools and thoughts and thinking paradigms that architect personality types bring to the table into the development realm. So that's definitely my jam.
Yeah, I can tell you're very shy about sharing it, though.
Am I? Really?
No, it's good to hear, though, because so many students are convinced there's a track for this person that just does design and that's it. And I get a sense that most young students that are thinking about entering the field are they would like their practice to represent more than just designing something. We hear a lot of discussion about environmental impact, the historical features of where the location they're building and why this is important, stuff like that. So it's good to hear that you've got this point of view about, which is really how it was. The architect was the visionary, and they ran the projects, and it was like your cathedral model. It was all about the architect.
Well, I don't want to say that like consultants and having team members, I don't want to somehow imply though that having consultants and team members and having a network isn't extremely important, because it is to us. Even though that's been sort of, maybe that sounds like it's implied, it's not really. But I guess what it is that I just don't like the marginalization that architects have faced, and the over specialization that's happened in the profession. And I think that architects are pretty brilliant, and that we should take on more. And that is something that I try to imbue with young people who come join our team, and try to, you know, kind of put them in the driver's seat of that your role isn't just a design. Well, your role isn't just a designer of buildings, it's actually a designer of the entirety of the process. So it's a designer of the business model. It's a designer of how the city comes to be. It's you know, I think that architectural thinking should be applied on different scales more actively, and that it's a disservice to architects that we think that we're just building designers and just object designers.
Well, Tyler, our time is up. Thank you so much for sharing with us. When I post this, I'm going to post contact information for your website and some of the links that you put into for the books and some of your other work. So again, thank you, and thank you for the students. And one final thing is, you can go ahead and email us off the video, and you'll see the link here in the slide when I put it up on YouTube, so that you can ask Tyler questions after the fact as well. Once again, this is AIA East Bay's A Day in the Life of, and thanks again to Tyler Kobick with Design, Draw, Build. You have a good evening now.
I appreciate all y'all's time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye now.